Hello, I'm Sancha Martin. I'm the BRUK Programme Manager and I'm based at the University of Edinburgh. In this short film, I'm going to take you through some of the considerations and the processes to follow when submitting an application to the BRUK Commissioning Fund. First, just to explain a little bit about BRUK. So BRUK has been funded through the Economic and Social Research Council as part of their National Capability and Behavioural Research Programme. That is a £17 million investment to harness, connect and extend existing capacity and capability in interdisciplinary behavioural research and to support the mobilisation of research into policy and practice within the UK. As part of the NCBR, ESRC have funded BRUK and they have also funded the Centre for National Training and Research Excellence in Understanding Behaviour, Centre UB. Centre UB is based at the University of Birmingham and is led by Professor Jessica Woodhams. Within BRUK, our vision is to conduct interdisciplinary research to help address societal challenges. We want to do that by using approaches that are integrated, coordinated, inclusive, collaborative, embedded across the UK, and with a strong focus on open science. On the right-hand side of this slide, you can see our academic partners who are spread right across the country. In addition to these universities, our team is composed of co-investigators from Scottish Government, Public Health Wales, UK Health Security Agency, Transport Research Lab Limited and Zinc Ventures Limited. We have additional partnerships with Welsh Government, government departments in Northern Ireland, the Public Health Agency in Northern Ireland and others as listed on the slide. So what is the BRUK Commissioning Fund? It is a £1.3 million fund which is designed to enable and support exemplar projects to further build behavioural research capability across the UK. The fund is not designed to extend BRUK's own research specifically, but it is designed to facilitate development and adoption of new approaches and ways of thinking that align and complement our own objectives. Those objectives are to increase scientific understanding of behavioural research and its contribution to tackling global challenges, advance the methods used in behavioural research across a range of contexts, and to generate impact by the use of co-production and championing widespread use of behavioural datasets. So anyone who receives funding from the NCBR or already receives funding from BRUK's Commissioning Fund call in the first round are not eligible to apply to this second round. The first call took place in 2025 and that was designed following a national capability scoping study that was conducted by colleagues within BRUK. That study identified 3 broad methodological themes that we believed would advance the field and further develop capability in behavioural research. Those 3 topic areas were the use of artificial intelligence in building knowledge and conducting behavioural research, integration of knowledge across types of data, academic disciplines and sectors, and explaining variations in effectiveness of behavioural interventions across contexts. The call received a large number of applications and we're very pleased to say that we funded 3 research projects and 7 accelerator projects. These are listed on the screen. In total, we assigned just under £1.1 million to cover the funding for these 10 projects. Full details of these projects are available on the BRUK website. Because we assigned £1.1 million out of the 1.3, that does mean that we have some funding left. So therefore, we are launching a second call, which is focused on accelerator awards, and that is looking for behavioural research projects focused on the environment and sustainability that can address one of the 2 following themes: integration of knowledge across data, academic disciplines and sectors, and explaining variations in effectiveness again. We've dropped the AI theme from this particular call because we have funded a number of those in our first round, and so to balance the books, so to speak, we are focusing on these 2 themes in this particular call. This call is for accelerator proposals only, and those proposals would be up to £50,000 each, which will be funded at 80% full economic costs in line with standard UKRI approaches. Projects are expected to be between 12 and 18 months duration, and their purpose is really to provide initial funding, to provide proof of concept, and to generate new data or evidence that would allow applicants to pursue further funding or opportunities to further their knowledge and their career. The leads of these projects are expected to be early career researchers, but if they have a team, that may include co-investigators and collaborators who will contribute and support the early career principal applicant. But what is an early career researcher? There's various definitions for this. BRUK's definition is that an ECR is an individual employed to conduct research activities on a precarious contract and who has not held a grant exceeding £100,000 or more, which includes grants from organisations other than UKRI. The restriction does not apply to co-investigators playing a supporting role in the project or to other named staff who may identify as early career researchers. Early career researchers can self-identify and may include those returning from a career break, so the length of time since you completed your doctorate is not necessarily relevant. To be eligible, applications must be submitted by an early career researcher at a recognised organisation that is able to accept and receive funding from the UK Research and Innovation. The lead applicants must be based within the UK. Business, third or government sector co-applicants are welcome. Applications should be co-funded with cash or in-kind donations by the applicant's organisation or other partners. And the last permitted start date for projects would be the 1st of February 2027, depending on the length of that project. So the projects must be completed by October 2028, which is in line with BRUK's current funding period. Overall applications will be assessed upon their scientific merit and a number of other categories. In terms of exclusions for who cannot apply, so applications that are not led by an ECR are not eligible. And again, anyone who has held funding of £100,000 or more and who is a lead on an application would be excluded. Those in receipt of funding from the National Capability and Behavioural Research investment from ESRC are also excluded. One additional point to consider when you are putting your team together: full-time students can only be involved in a study where it doesn't interfere with their existing research. So that is, if they're full-time and they're funded by someone else, they need to make sure that they are eligible to take on a casual research role, and it would only be permitted as a casual research role within commissioning fund applications. Applications are not only for higher education institutions and academics. Where there is a larger research team supporting the early career researcher, we expect them to be interdisciplinary and cross-sector in their composition where practical and reasonable to be so. Business, voluntary and public sector applicants are welcome. Businesses must comply with the UK Subsidy Control Act 2022, which can take some time checking, but should not be anything that puts people off from businesses and commercial partners from applying. The cost of co-leads from these sectors must not amount to more than 30% of the overall financial request, and overheads and other indirect costs are not eligible for inclusion for these partners. Eligible costs do include directly allocated costs such as casual staff, estates and other specified costs. Directly incurred costs include staff, equipment, travel and subsistence and other specified directly incurred costs, and indirect costs. Again, 80% of the request will be funded by BRUK, with the remaining 20% expected to be covered by the applicant's institution, which is the usual approach when using UKRI and the full economic funded costing model. Other eligible costs for partners can include salary, travel and subsistence and other DI costs for business and third sector. Academic partners may also request overheads, and public bodies may only apply for travel and subsistence. Full details regarding the costs and eligibility and what is and is not allowed to be included are on the UKRI website, and we will provide a link to that. Co-funding is necessary for all applications, so you must have an element of co-funding, which can be in the form of a cash infusion or an in-kind contribution of some type. So, for example, a direct contribution of cash, a specified amount of funding from either a departmental budget or an industry partner, for example, would count. An in-kind contribution such as staff time or access to equipment where the costs are waived would be included, but you would need to quantify the value of that. So make sure you include all those details. The application process itself, so you can download the application form from the BRUK website. The form must be completed by the lead applicant who's applying for funding, and you must make sure to follow your internal approval processes related to applications for external funding. You must not apply if you have not obtained your internal institutional approval to do so, and you've not had internal review and sign off of the financial request that you are making. Applications must apply with UKRI funding rules and any additional rules specified by BRUK. The application form must be completed in full and submitted along with a 2-page CV and any optional letters of support via email to inquiries@br-uk.ac.uk by 4 p.m. on September the 11th. As part of the process, please make sure you refer to BRUK's principles. We consider open science, co-production, public engagement and stakeholder involvement, as well as equality, diversity, inclusion and intersectionality as key considerations in all that we do. We strongly encourage you to read each of our policies and procedures on these. Again, links will be provided before you complete the application form. The application form itself is made up of 10 sections. I know it sounds a lot, but some of the sections are very short, I do promise you that. The first section is general guidance, so explaining the processes. The second is the lead applicant details, project outline, research team, project plan. Section 5 is quite long. This is where you will specify your research question, the novelty, the methods, the deliverables and the outputs that you expect. We also ask you to tell us about your engagement and dissemination plans, your equality, diversity, inclusion and intersectionality considerations. Section 8 on the finances, please pay attention to this. Make sure that you provide a fully detailed breakdown of the costs that you're asking for, justify and explain those costs, and provide details of any co-funding that you have obtained. In Section 9, please outline any conflicts of interest that you might have, and any sustainability considerations can be outlined in Section 10. When we triage your application, there are 3 main questions that we will be looking at. We'll be making sure that the applicants and named staff are eligible under our scheme requirements. We'll make sure that you've completed all of the documents in full and that you've supplied your CV for the lead applicant only. And we will also check that the proposal directly meets the aims and criteria of the funding scheme. If the answer is yes to all of these questions, we will then take your application forward to peer review. The peer review process is based on a blind screening process. This reflects our commitment to equality, diversity, inclusion and intersectionality. It's not possible to completely bind applications, of course, but what we will do is remove the first section of the application form that outlines your name, your administering institution, for example. This is only withheld during the first initial peer review stage, where individual researchers within BRUK undertake a scientific evaluation of your application. It means that their initial focus is solely on your research plans and proposals, and we share your CV and your full name and all the other details with them after they have completed their individual review. We then have a group evaluation, and I'll speak a little bit more about that, but as part of that peer review process, there are 6 points each for a number of categories, which I will outline in the next but one slide. So I'm just going to speak very briefly about the evaluation meeting first. So in the evaluation meeting, this involves a review of the financial and contracting aspects by members of the University of Edinburgh as the contracting institution, including myself. But the evaluation meeting really focuses on the scientific evaluation by a panel of experts. So that is members of BRUK and invited experts and others as needed to make sure that we have representation for all of the topic areas. That scientific evaluation will look specifically at 5 areas which we have outlined individual researchers to look at as part of their independent peer review. That includes looking at the scientific merit, so the originality, the significance, the outputs and the rigour of your research. So how original and innovative is the proposal? Is there similar work being undertaken anywhere else that we know of? Does the application summarise previous work and explain how they are building upon that? Are there obvious gaps that you have either missed in the application or in reality that have not been referenced? Are the outputs that you suggest realistic and rational, and will the research contribute significantly to the advancement of knowledge in the area of behavioural research? The feasibility of your plan and the methodology that you propose is also extremely important. The team will be looking to see that your experimental plans are realistic and feasible, given that the amount of resources that you request and the aim of the overall research. They will check that the methods and study design is appropriate, clear and transparent. Have you provided enough details for them to fully understand the plan? What are the scientific, technological and organisational challenges that you might have to tackle, and how are you going to do that? And in the case of applications for the accelerators, we would strongly encourage you to mention how the work will be further developed and how feasible subsequent proposals would be following a successful research output. In terms of impact, we'll be looking at your dissemination plans, including the potential to influence policy and practice and engagement with relevant publics to ensure that you will translate your outputs into outcomes and impacts. Those may be related to policy making, societal benefits, capacity building, or academic benefits, for example. We will make sure that the dissemination plans are adequate and fully considered. We will also look at the value for money, so we need to make sure we have efficient use of funds and resources. So we will check that your request is compliant with the UKRI funding rules. So again, please make sure you've discussed internally with your research support office, who will make sure that you've categorised your costs accordingly. We will also check that the level of resources requested seems appropriate to deliver your stated aims, and we will also make sure that we have the details of any co-funding that you've secured. Finally, we'll also look at the team composition. We will assess qualifications, experience and diversity. So we'll be making sure that you have a diverse perspective and required set of skills and experience to deliver the work. And if there are any obvious gaps, we will be looking for these. So please do mention if you know you have a skills gap, for example, in the project, if you plan to recruit someone, for example, to support or to fill that gap, please make sure that you reference that within this section. Additional documents that we ask you to supply. We ask for a 2-page brief CV for the lead applicant only. There's no prescribed format and style for that. Just make sure it does not go longer than 2 pages. We allow you to include references in an appendix which must be no more than a 1-page maximum. You can include letters of support. Any number of letters is welcome. But we strongly recommend that where co-funding has been promised, you have a letter of support that outlines that so that it is in writing. In terms of conflicts of interest, just want to cover this briefly. A number of people within BRUK actively research in this area. But just to say, a conflict is a direct or indirect financial interest or a non-financial or personal interest that's related to your research. That can include something like a competing loyalty between the research and the organisation that you owe a primary duty to, so somewhere that you work, for example. We'd also want to know if you have any links or relationships with members of BRUK that you think would impair their judgment or put you in a position where you couldn't be judged fairly. That should not preclude you submitting an application, this latter point. That just means that we would make sure that you are peer reviewed by someone that you don't have a direct known relationship with. So basically we ask that any private, personal or commercial interest which could give rise to any conflict of interest or be sort of perceived as a conflict of interest are recognised, disclosed and are either eliminated or properly managed. And you can read more about what a conflict is in our conflict management policy. We'll provide links again to that document. So finally, just to cover our last couple of bits, the key dates and guidance that's available for you. So the commissioning fund is open at the moment, but applications must be submitted by 4 p.m. on September the 11th, 2026. Independent peer review will take place before the end of September, dependent on diaries, and group evaluation is scheduled to take place in mid-October. We expect to be relaying outcomes in early November, with contracting to take place in December, and ideally we will have projects starting in January or February at the latest in 2020. So guidance available, the funding call description, the frequently asked questions and the UKRI funding guidelines are all on the internet. So the first 2 are on the BRUK website and obviously the third is on the UKRI website. We will provide links to all of this. Please note that our frequently asked questions is not exhaustive. There might be things that we have missed, and if there are, you can please get in touch with us by email. So we will update the FAQs as we go forwards. So if people do ask us for points of clarification, we will add it to our website. So please do routinely review the website. Where new points are added, these will be clearly marked so that you can see this. We strongly recommend, again, just to emphasise that we encourage you to read our policies and statements on open science, EDII, our code of conduct and our management of interest, which will help you understand how BRUK operates and our expectations around how we would expect you to operate. So the email address is on the screen for any inquiries that you have related to the process, any questions, any problems at any time, please drop us an email. Please note that after the 11th of September, we will not respond to emails. We will acknowledge receipt of your applications, but we will not be responding to general questions about the commissioning fund. If you have any issues with your submission, please make sure to email that email address. So for example, if for some reason the email is bouncing, maybe your document is too big, for example, please make sure that you contact us by that email address to let us know, and we will look at alternative submission routes for you. I do hope that was helpful. Just a very quick run through of the process today. But if you have questions, please, again, drop us a line. But otherwise, we look forward to reading all of your proposals in the very near future. Good luck.